On April 26, 1986, the night crew at the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant arrived to conduct a routine safety drill. Their objective, to confirm if the plant could power its cooling pumps during a total blackout. This was a massive operation. Chernobyl's RBMK 1000 reactors were some of the most powerful ever built, responsible for 10% of Ukraine's entire electricity supply. The drill was intended to make the plant safer, but it triggered an explosion that released radioactive material equal to 400 Hiroshima atomic bombs. While the disaster is often blamed on human error, the operators were using a machine containing a fatal engineering flaw hidden deep within its design. To see how a safety test became a catastrophe, we first have to look at the mechanics of the RBMK 1000. The reactor functions like a car. Uranium fuel rods act as the engine, generating heat through nuclear fission. To speed up that reaction, the core uses blocks of graphite, a moderator that functions like an accelerator pedal. Managing that heat requires a constant flow of cooling water, which absorbs thermal energy to prevent the fuel from melting through the floor. Finally, the boron control rods act as the brakes. When these rods are lowered into the core, they absorb neutrons and shut down the nuclear reaction. Running the plant meant keeping the fuel, the graphite, the water, and the boron in a perfect balance. On that April night, that balance was about to be shattered. As the operators prepared for the test, the reactor's power output suddenly plummeted, falling to just 30 megawatts. This chart shows the cause of the drop. A byproduct called xenon-135 was building up in the core. Xenon is a powerful neutron absorber, which meant it was unintentionally slamming the brakes on the reactor. To force the power back up for the test, the shift supervisor ordered the workers to withdraw almost every control rod. They left only 8 in the core, a move that violated every safety protocol in the book. With the brakes removed, power began to rise, boiling the cooling water into steam. This created a positive feedback loop. Steam can't cool the core, so the heat rises, which creates even more steam, accelerating the reaction further. The operators were flooring the gas pedal without realizing the reactor was already accelerating into a state they could no longer control. By 1:23 a.m., the building was shaking. Realizing the reaction was runaway, a worker pressed the emergency stop button to drop all the control rods back into the reactor at once. In an RBMK 1000, the control rods are made of boron to stop the reaction. However, those rods were tipped with graphite, the very material used as the reactor's accelerator. When the emergency button was pressed, those graphite tips entered the core first. Instead of slowing the reaction, they infinitely spiked it, pushing power output to 33,000 megawatts in seconds. The intense heat instantly vaporized the cooling water, triggering a massive steam explosion that blew the 1,000-ton steel lid off the reactor. The very mechanism designed to shut the reactor down in an emergency was the exact trigger that detonated it. The blast exposed the burning graphite core, which began venting a massive radioactive plume directly into the atmosphere. Firefighters arrived minutes later, battling what they thought was a conventional fire. They stood in the path of the plume for hours, unknowingly absorbing lethal doses of radiation. A second, larger disaster was also imminent. The melting fuel was burning through the concrete floor toward tanks of water below. If the molten core touched that water, the resulting explosion would have rendered much of Europe uninhabitable. 3 divers waded into the radioactive water beneath the reactor to manually open the drain valves. Using a single flashlight in the dark, they emptied the tanks and prevented a second blast. While the reactor's technology failed, the survival of millions was secured by the literal, physical sacrifice of the workers on the front lines. The cleanup cost the Soviet Union $235 billion. 200,000 workers, called liquidators, were dispatched into the zone to bury contaminated soil and equipment. The long-term health impact was devastating. Radioactive dust settled on local pastures, contaminating the milk supply and leading to thousands of cases of thyroid cancer in children. In 2019, a massive steel confinement arch was completed to slide over the ruins. It is designed to keep the reactor sealed and the radiation contained for at least the next century. Chernobyl fundamentally changed nuclear engineering. Modern plants now use water as both a coolant and a moderator, ensuring that if the water ever boils away, the reaction physically cannot continue. The explosion dismantled the Soviet Union's nuclear ambitions and forced a total redesign of atomic power. It remains the definitive example of what happens when procedural shortcuts intersect with a hidden engineering failure.